Hello everyone and welcome to the third video of the Flutter's Awesome Notes application video series. In the previous video we worked on the new or edit note page and we designed it and we implemented it and we made it ready for taking the actual notes. And in this video we are going to do two major things. First, we will make the app to be able to take the actual notes using this page and also edit notes using this page, and also we will move our state management to the next level using the provider package, because the current state management solution that we're using, which is setState, is just good for very small sized application, but for larger applications we have to use another solution, and in this video we are going to use the provider package. So we're going to do these two things like simultaneously, because that way it will make sense. So let's move on. But first of all, as I mentioned in the previous video, the flutter-quill package, which we're using it for taking the rich text notes, is very active. So it is updated to new version. So we have to update our local version to the latest version. So let's just do that first and then we'll move on to our main tasks. So first of all, let's go to the pub.dev and check which version is the final one. So we'll type flutter-quill, and in here it is flutter-quill 9.1.0. so I'll just copy the version number and come to my project and then to pubspec.yaml file, and in here I will just update the flutter-quill version number, and then I will run flutter pub get to get the latest version. And while this is completing, let's go to the flutter-quill page and see what is changed. So let me see. So let me find the migration guide. So here it is. I will click on this and see what has changed. So we're changing from 8 to 9. So I'll click on this one. And in here they're saying that we're removing the quill provider and each quill toolbar, and quill editor takes its own controller, and we'll do that. And also we have to change the Minsticky version to 23. So let's do that. I think we're ready now. And first of all, I'll go to build.gradle app level, and in here I'll find the Minsticky version and change it to 23. This is one thing. And other thing that I want to mention is try to update your Flutter version as well to the latest version, because the flutter-quill package uses the latest version of the Flutter. So I have, let me see which version I have. So I have 3.16.4 and Dart 3.2.3. So just run flutter upgrade and it will upgrade the Flutter version installed on your machine. And other thing that I want to do is to change the minimum SDK in the pubspec.yaml from 3.2.0 to 3.2.3 as well. And now let me kill this application and run it again from the start, because we changed some major things. And now I will run the application again. First of all, I have to stop this and then run it again. Okay, there are some errors happening, and let me see where they are. Okay, so the error is basically that there is no quill provider anymore, so we have to remove this quill provider. And to remove that, I'll remove it in here, and then I'll remove one and then the other, and then let me go to the page again and see how this works now. So we have to provide the quill editor.basic and give it quill editor configurations. So in here we have to give the controller, and that is going to be quill controller. interesting. And the other thing is we have to go to the new toolbar widget, and in here there are the errors. And now the quill toolbar, so we have to use the quill toolbar.simple. Okay, so I'll use .simple, and then I have to remove the const, and now we have to give different configurations because that is changed for now. So I'll just copy this one all to the end and just paste it in here just in case if we need it. And now let me see what is required. So the configuration is required, and this takes quill simple toolbar configurations, and we have to give it controller. So in order to give it a controller, which takes a quill controller, so I'll just copy this and define it in here, and then pass it through the constructor, and let me make it final. And now we're good for now. And other thing that I have to do is to add the button options. So I will just copy all of these button options all the way to here and paste it in here. And I have to import the font awesome, and I have to remove these things because they're not required in this flutter-quill version. And then this button options is now different, and that takes quill simple toolbar button options, and we have to paste it. And other thing that we have to do is to also copy all of these properties and bring them in here. Amazing. And now just let me add the const keywords, and the only area remaining is that we have to pass the controller in here, and we have to remove the const. And now I will run the application from the start. And I'll be back when it is finished. Okay, so let's go to the new or edit note page, and as you can see, the toolbar is not in a good shape because first the icons are very large, and second the alignment is not good. So for that, I think we have to implement our own quill toolbar. So for that, let's go to the node toolbar, and in here, instead of quill toolbar.simple, we have to use the quill toolbar. And let me first see how the quill toolbar.simple toolbar is implemented. So it is calling the, okay, let me see, quill simple toolbar, and quill simple toolbar is having quill toolbar history button and also font family button and all those buttons. So we can also use these buttons, okay, for ourselves. So to do that, let me go to the note toolbar, and instead of quill toolbar.simple, we can remove the simple, and now quill toolbar takes a child, and here we have to specify each button differently. So I have to use the row widget, and as the children we can now specify each button. So now for the first button we will use quill toolbar history button, and just copy until the button and paste it in here. And now this takes a controller, which we will give it the controller that is coming from the constructor of the node toolbar widget. And the other thing that it requires is the is undo that we have to specify, and we will say is undo is going to be true. And the other thing that we have to do is to specify the options, and for that we can simply copy this one, which is the options, and just specify the options and paste it in here. Amazing. And now we can remove the icon size because by default it is larger. And now let me remove all this configuration until here and just paste it again in here to keep it as a reference. So now I will just make a hot reload to see how this looks so far. Okay, so here's the button, and now this button looks much larger, and we can specify the icon size, but If we do not give the icon size, by default it is the proper size. Okay, so this part is good, and now let's move on to the next button, and that is going to be again the cool history button, and the only difference is going to be the as undo is going to be false, and the arrow rotate left is going to be arrow rotate right. And let me see it again. Amazing. And now let's move on to other buttons. So I'll just clean this, and also we are done with undo and redo, and we can delete this part. And now we have to bring the bold button, so for that I'll use cool toolbar toggle style button, and I will copy this and bring it in here. And again, it takes a controller, which is going to be controller, and also the attribute is going to be attribute dot bold. And for the options, we can copy this and bring it in here, and just remove the icon size, and let me see. Amazing. And now we can do the same for the italic, just by copying all of this and just changing the attribute to italic and also the icon to italic. Okay, the next turn is for, let me see, we have done the bold and italic. We can remove this, and then we have the underline and then strike through. So I'll just say underline and then again underline, and then I can copy this again and give it strike through, and for the icon again strike through. So we are done with these two buttons too, and now we have the color option, and for that we have to say quill toolbar color button, and I will paste it in here, and this again requires a controller, and also the is background for the first one, and that is going to be just the color of the text itself, so the background is going to be false. And as the options, it will take quill toolbar button options, and I'll remove the icon size. Amazing. And then I'll copy this for the other color, which is going to be the background. It's going to be true, and this will add color to the background of the text, and the icon is going to be fill drip. So these two buttons are also done, and now we have to add the cool toolbar clear format button, and as the controller we'll give it a controller, and as the options we will give it this options, and then remove the icon size. And again we have another button for list numbers, so I'll use quill toolbar toggle style button. So I have it in here, so I'll just copy this one and just bring it in here, and now I will just change this to list, okay, OL, and this is going to be list OL, and then I can copy this one and duplicate that, and then this is going to be UL, and the icon is going to be list UL. Now these two buttons are also done, and the final one is going to be search button. So controller is going to be controller, and the options is going to be quill toolbar search button options. And I'll remove the icon size and add a comma in here, and also I can remove this one because we're done. And now I can add the consts, and let me hot reload this. Amazing. The only thing that is remaining is that we're using row, and this is overflowing the boundaries, and for that I have to wrap the row with single child scroll view and give it is scroll direction of axis dot horizontal, because we want it horizontal and by default it is vertical. And now we are back with our mighty toolbar. We can use it as before. Amazing. And now the toolbar is migrated to the latest version, and that is so good. But the other thing that is remaining before we start our main tasks is, and this is figured out by one of the channel viewers by the name of Mr. Zach Frum. And thank you, Mr. Zach Frum, from mentioning it in the comment section of the previous video. And that is when we change the new note page mode to the read mode, then by clicking the quill editor, we do not request focus. And that is good because we don't want to write something when it is in read mode. But when we click on the title, it requests focus. So to solve this, we will go to the new or edit note page and find the title text field. And here it is. And now we have to add another property into this text field, and that is going to be can request focus. So I will say only request the focus if you are not in the read only mode. Okay, so I'll say not read only, then you can request focus. And now when I hot reload this, and again change this to the edit mode, and again if I change it to the read mode, and now if I click on the title text field, then we are not getting the focus, and the bug is solved. Amazing. So before moving on to the main tasks of this video, I want to commit this code. Amazing. Now to be able to add a new note, first we have to introduce a module class for representing a note. To do that, I'll go to the lib folder and right click on it and then create a new file, and I'll call it models, and then I'll call it note.dart. So it'll create both a folder called models and inside that a note file at the same time. So I'll create a class and call it note. And for the note, what we have to store is, first, it will have a final string of title, and then final string content, and this will show just the content in here, as in here. And another thing that I want to store is also the rich text format of the content, because inside the note itself, when we're creating or editing it, we need the rich text, and for that we have to store it in a JSON format, because this is how the quill editor works. So I'll say final string, again this is going to be JSON format string, and I'll say content JSON. And another thing that I want to store is the date created and date modified. So I'll say final, and I will store the date in integer format, and that is going to be date created and final integer date modified. And the final thing that I want to store is the tags, and that is going to be a list of string, and we will call it tags. And now how I want this application to work is that there may be no note title or no note content, but not at the same time. There should be either title or content. So I can make this title like nullable. Maybe there is title or there is not, and also the content nullable, but not the content JSON. We cannot make it nullable, because even if the content is an empty string, the content JSON, the way the flutter-quill represents it in the JSON format, is a non-empty string, even for the empty content string. So we cannot make it nullable. And now it's time to create a constructor, and I will say note, and I'll add all of these as required properties. So I will say required this.title and required this.content required, and then again required this.content JSON, and then required this dot date created, and then required this dot date modified, and then again required this dot tags. And again, I want to also add the nullable operator in here because maybe some nodes have the tags and others don't. Amazing. And now I want to change these dummy nodes and show the real nodes. So to do that, I will, as I told you, I will change the state management to the provider state management solution. So to manage the state of this main page, we have to create a new class and extend it from the change notifier, and then we can manage the nodes that are coming in this page. So for that, I'll go to the lib folder again and create a new file and a new folder called Change Notifiers, and inside of this folder I will create a new file called Notes Provider, and inside this file I'll create a class called Notes Provider, and I will extend this from Change Notifier. And now I will introduce a final list of, let's say, note, and I'll call it notes, and this is going to be empty for the first time. And let me import the note file, and these notes are going to represent the notes that are going to show on the screen. And I made it private, and I'll explain why, but first of all I have to add the provider package for state management. So first of all, I'll go to the flutter-quill, and in here I will to the pub.dev, and in here I will search for provider, and let me find the provider and go to the installing tab and copy this command, and then come back to our editor and go to the terminal and paste it and add it in here to retrieve the provider package into our project. So now, to be able to use this notes provider in this main page, we have to first provide it to our application. So for that, I'll go to the main.dart file, and in here I can add the note provider class into the main page or to the material app. But if we add it to the main page, then remember that providers are widget tree specific. If I provide it in here, all the widgets inside of this main page widget can access that provider. But if I go to another route, for example, if I go to the new or edit node page, then we cannot access that provider because we're now in a different route than the main page. So to be able to access that in the main page and also in the new or edit node page, we have to provide it to the material app. So I will wrap the material app with a new widget, and this is going to be ChangeNotifierProvider. And ChangeNotifierProvider takes a create, and this is, let me check it out, a function which comes with a build context and return a change notifier. So I will just say context and then return the notes provider that we introduced before, and I'll import that. And now as the child, it is going to be the material app, and we're good to go. And now in the main page, I want to access those notes and show them instead of these dummy notes. So for that, we have to wrap the body or even the scaffold, okay, doesn't matter, but we don't need it in the scaffold, all of the scaffold, because in the app bar we don't need that for now. So we can add it to the padding, and in here I can consume that provider using another widget which is coming with the provider package, and it is called the consumer. Amazing. And now this is a generic type widget, so we can specify which change notifier I want to consume, and I'll say I want to consume the notes provider. And now consumer takes a builder, so instead of the child I will just change it to builder, and this builder takes a function which comes with build context and also the notes provider and another optional widget. And this notes provider is coming from here because we specified it in here. So I will say context and then notes provider and then an optional child, and I will just return all of this widget tree. And now we can use it in here. So first of all, I want to extract those notes. So I'll change this from this notation to the curly braces notation, and then I'll add a semicolon in here and then a curly braces in here. And now I will extract all of those notes. So I'll say final list of notes. Okay, note, and I'll say notes, and this is going to be notes provider dot notes. And now we cannot access the notes because first it is a private member. So to be able to access this, I will just use a getter. So I'll say list of note, and I'll say get, and then I'll say notes, and then just return the notes. Okay, now I can get the notes this way, but a better way is to wrap this in a new list and return this as a new list using the spread operator. This way we cannot modify this actual notes list using this notes getter, because now this is different object than this one. So in here now the error is gone and we can just import the note library. And now what I want to do is to go to the expanded, and now in the notes grid we have to pass those notes to the notes grid and also notes list widget. So to do that, I will just introduce a final list of note, and I'll say notes, and in here I'll just add it as required this dot notes, and let me import this. And now as the item count, we have to remove this and add the notes.length, and as the item builder, now we can pass each note to the note card. So for that we have to again go to the note card, and in here just say final note note and import the note and accept it in the note card widget. Amazing. And let me go back to the notes grid, and in here I will say note is going to be notes index, and let me remove the const. Amazing. And let me go to the main page again and just pass the notes to here, and the same thing with the notes list. So I'll just copy it from the note grid and paste it in here, and just import this one and again accept it in here. And now this is stateful and we don't need that, so we can change it to stateless, and then again change the item count to notes.length, and the note card is going to take a note, and that is going to be notes for each index. Amazing. And now we are in the main page, and we have to remove this const and add the notes. Great. So now we are showing the notes, and let me hot restart this. Okay, so there are no notes showing because we don't have any note in the note provider. It is an empty notes list. So for now we cannot add the new note dynamically, but until then we have to first fix this empty page if there are no notes. So we should show something to the user that there are no notes available. So to do that, I will come to in here, and now I will specify if notes.is empty, then I'll show another thing, otherwise I'll show this part. So if notes are empty, we can show a column, and then as the child we can use like a text and say something like you have no notes yet, new line, and then we'll say start creating by pressing the plus button below. Amazing. And I also want to add a picture. So to add a picture, we can use different ways, like add a picture from an asset, which will be in the project folder, and also add it from a network and also from a file. But in this case, we will use the assets option. So first of all, to add the image to the project asset folder, so we have created the assets folder, and now I will right click the assets folder and then create a new folder and call it images. And inside this images folder, I want to copy and paste an image from my computer. So I'll go to my downloads page and then copy the person image. This is an image, and then I'll just paste it in the images folder. And to use this image, first of all, we have to register it with the pubspec.yaml. So to do that, we'll go to the pubspec.yaml and then come to this part which says assets, and then let's uncomment the first two lines, and then in here I can add the path in which the image resides, and in this case it is in the assets folder and then inside the images folder, and then it is called person.png. So I'll just clear this and just write person.png. And now let me get the updated pubspec.yaml configuration by flutter pub get and pressing the enter. Okay, now that this is done, we can safely go to the main page, and here we can use this asset using the image dot asset widget, and in here we have to specify the full path as we specified in the pubspec.yaml. So I will say assets slash images slash person.png, and let me give it a width of media query dot size of context dot width and multiply by 0.75. What this does is giving it a width of 75% of all of the screen width available. And then I will add a sized box between the text and image and give it a height of, let's say, 32. And also let me give some styling to the text also. So I'll say style, text style, and then give it a font size of 18 and font weight dot bold, and let me also make the text to the center. So I'll say alignment text align, and I'll get text align dot center. And also I want to add a padding in here and give it padding of 16 to all sides, and let me add the consts. And let me just hot reload this. Amazing. And to bring it to the center, we have to give the main axis alignment to the column and give it main axis alignment dot center. And one other thing that I want to do is to give font family of Fredoka to this text. Amazing. We're done with the empty notes part, and now we can safely extract this to a new widget and call it no notes. And I'll just bring this to its own file. So I'll just copy this and go to the widgets folder and then create a new file called no notes.dart, and then just paste it in here and then import the necessary libraries. Okay, and then go to the main page again and import the no notes file and also add the const modifier. Amazing. We created this page, and we will come back to this page after we are able to add new note. Okay? Now, to be able to add notes dynamically, first let's go to the new or edit note page and see what we need to do. So what I'm gonna do is introduce a different Change Notifier class for this new note page. because we need to extract the title and also the notes tags and also the note content and then add it to our notes list in the notes provider. So I will create a different change notifier and it'll help us to move all of the state management related things and also the business logic to a different class away from the UI part. So first of all, let's go to the new or edit note page and see how things are working for now. Now the state part in this page is related to the read-only because we are changing the read-only by pressing this book or pin button, and then the state is changing and the keyboard is shown or unshown. So we have to first define our change notifier for this new note page. So to do that, I'll go to the change notifiers directory and create a new file called, and let me call it new note controller.dart, and let me create the class new note controller, and we will extend it from again change notifier. And in here, first of all, I want to get this boolean property, copy it, and then paste it in here. And we can remove the latent here and assign it false in the first place. And now, to again use this new note controller change notifier in this screen, we can either add it to, let's say, to the main and add it in here, but we really don't need it this high because we only need it in this particular screen, not other place. So we have to try to add the change notifiers just on the top of the widget tree where we need it, not very high. So we have to add it to the new or edit note page, and to add it to this page, first we will see where this page is coming from. So I will see this is called from the main page and also the note card, but first we will go to the main page, and as we can see, this is brought to the screen in the note fab when we want to create new note. So to do that, I will wrap the new or edit note page with ChangeNotifierProvider, and again as the create property we can add context and then return new note controller, and now we can use the new note controller in here. So first of all, I will remove this read only so we can see where this is used and we can replace it with our new implementation. So first of all, this read only is modified in here. So for that, I have to create the new note controller. So to do that, I will first say late final new note controller, and I'll say new note controller, and in the init state I'll say new note controller. And to be able to get it this way, because in the init state we are just using it to modify its read-only property, not to rebuild our widget tree. So in the previous example we used it through consumer for rebuilding the widget tree, but in here we're just using for modifying its internal values. So we are just declaring it as a property of this class. And now to access this, we can use context, okay, dot read. Okay, so we will specify here new note controller. So we will say to the context that go and grab me the new note controller wherever it is provided to you. So it is just, in this case, it is just provided, you know, one step above the new note page. So it'll grab it and assign it to our new note controller variable. Amazing. And now we can say new note controller dot read only equals to false, and new note controller dot read only equals to true. So this part is done, and now let me see it in here. So now again we could use the consumer widget in here and listen to any changes from the new note controller and then update the widget tree. But in this example I want to use another widget which is more efficient than consumer, and this widget will listen to very tiny little changes in any change notifier and then update its child widget tree whenever just that specific value is changed. So specifically in this page, we only use the read only, okay? We only use it in the note icon button outlined and also just in this text field, and let me see, and just in this expanded part, the column part, okay? So we have just 3 places, but all the widget tree, we don't need it. So to be able to use it in these places only and not rebuild the entire widget tree, we have to use the selector widget. And to add that, I'll say selector, and in here, this takes 2 generic types, and first one is going to be the overall change notifier. In this case, it is going to be new note controller, and the second one is the property type that we want to listen to, and in this case it is just a boolean of read only. So we specify the type, and now this takes another property. The selector widget takes, let me see, it is taking selector and also builder, and the selector takes the build context in the new note controller, and I'll say context and new note controller, and in here I will return the value that I want to listen to. So in this case I will say new note controller dot read only, and now as the builder, which again takes a context, and now it is not taking the new note controller but instead the value that we returned in the selector. In this case it is going to be read only, and also an optional child, and then we can return the note icon button outlined. So now this read only, we can use it in here and say if read only, show this pin icon, and otherwise show the book open. And now to change the read only again, we cannot use read only is equal to not read only, because this is kind of like one-way channel, okay, not 2 ways. We cannot also update it. We can just read it through this value. So to be able to update that, we again need the new note controller object and to be able to call the read only and update it. So for that, we already introduced the new note controller in here. So in here, as I told you, we can modify the internal variables, okay? So I will say new note controller dot read only equals 2, and now we can use this value and say not read only, and we can remove this line, and again we have to remove the set state because we're not using the set state anymore, we are using the provider. Now we have to say new note controller dot read only. If this is the case, then unfocus, otherwise request the focus. So we are done with this part, and let's go to the next part where the read only is used, and that is in the text field. Again, we can wrap this with selector, and I'll say new note controller, and I want a boolean value to listen to, and that boolean value is going to be controller dot read only, and as the builder I'll say context, and in here I'll say read only and an optional child, and in here I'll say return the text field and then listen to read only. And one thing to remember, that this read only variable name is not necessary to be the same as this read only, because this is just scoped to here. Okay, we can say like read, okay, and it doesn't matter, you can just replace it in here. So you just keep that in mind. Now again we can go to in here, and we use the read only in here in the expanded, and also outside of that, so we can wrap the column widget into the selector, and again I'll say new note controller and boolean, and as the selector I just say context, and in this case I don't really need the context, so I'll say underscore, and I'll say controller and controller dot read only. And in the case of builder, I'll say context. Again, I don't need it, so I'll use underscore, and I'll say read only, and I'll again use 2 underscores because we are not using the child either, and we'll return the column, and in here we can use this read only. And now the errors are gone. And I hope we don't use the set state anymore, and yes, we're not using it. We're completely transformed to the provider. And let me hot restart this. Okay, so I'll go to the new or edit note page and see if that works. So I'll just change this and it is working. Okay, but there is some small bug that is happening, and that is because when we are changing the new note controller that read only, this part is fine. Okay, the focus part is fine, but as you can see, if we change it to the read mode, then this toolbar is not hidden. But in fact, if we go to the code and see the note toolbar, and we are saying if not read only, then show the note toolbar, but it is showing in both cases. So there is something wrong, and that is because we are not changing the state. In fact, we're just changing the read only variable. Okay, so to be able to change the state, we have to some way notify its listeners that, hey, change the state because I'm changed. So to do that, we have to first turn this read only to a private property and then introduce a setter. So I'll say set, and I'll say read only, and then I'll say bool and give it a value, and then read only is going to be this value. And then in here, when we assign a new value to read only, then we say notify listeners. Okay, so how do we get the read only? Because now it is private, so we have to introduce a getter, and I'll say bool get read only, and that is going to return the read only. And remember, this read only is equal to this read only because now they can work the same. So we can also set it through the read only and also get it through the read only. And let me hot reload this, and let me go back and then come again and see how this works. And now let me see what is the error that is happening. Okay, I think we have to hot restart this. Okay, let me hot restart this. And let me go back to the new or edit note page. And again, the error is happening. So that is happening because when we go to the new or edit note page and we come in here, we get the new note controller. And then in here, we say new note controller that read only equals to false or equals to true. Now, when this is called, the init state is, as you know, is called before the build is called. So it means that before the entire widget tree is built. So this read only, as you can see, sets the read only value and also notify the listeners. So when the notify listeners is called, all of its listeners, and in this case, we have all of the selector, which are the listeners for this value, are re-rendered, rebuilt, but in this case they are not in the widget tree, so it is giving us errors. So to be able to prevent this error, we have to wrap this with something else, and that is going to be widgets binding dot instance and dot add post frame callback. And now what this is going to do, when the widget tree is available one frame after that, this specific function will be called. So inside this function, I want to cut this code and bring it in here. So I will say whenever the widget tree is available, then call this part. Okay, so that rebuilding the widget tree will not cause any problem. So I will just hot restart again. And now let's go again to the new or edit note page, and hopefully no error occurs. And voila. And now when we change the edit node to the read mode, now the note toolbar is gone. Okay, interesting. So now this part is done. And now it's time to create new notes. So to do that, we have to be able to extract title and also tags and also note content text to be able to create a new note instance. So to do that, we can do several approaches. Okay, first, like in here, we have the quill controller for this part, for the content part, and also we could introduce another text editing controller for the title text field, and for the tags, we could use like some other approach, and all of them could be in here, and then we can add a method for adding the note. But it will not be the way how things should work, because we want to separate the UI from the state and also the business logic. So to do that, I want to keep track of the title text and also all of the tags and also all of the content text in the new note controller. Okay, and also to be able to add the new note from that new note controller, Change Notifier. So I'll first go to the new note controller and define first of all a string for the title. So I'll say string title and I'll make it private. So and I'll just start it with an empty string and then define a setter. So I'll say set title and then string value, and then title is going to be equal to value, and then I will notify the listeners. And then to get the title, I'll say string get title, and then I will return the title. And I want to do the same thing for the note content. So we cannot simply store it in a string because we're dealing with rich text. So we have to store it in a different object other than a string. So we will use a class named document, and this is coming with flutter-quill package, and I will say underscore content, and it is going to be equal to an empty document. So I'll say document, and to set it, I'll say set, and then content with a document of value, and I will set the content to the value and then notify the listeners. And to get it, I'll say document get content, and that is going to be content. And the same thing for the tags. So we're going to store the tags in a list of string. So I will say a list of string underscore tags. So they're going to be an empty list, and to set them, so I'll say set. So instead of setting the tags overall, I'll just add the tags to them. So I'll just remove the setter and I'll say void add tag, and I'll say string tag, and then I will say tags dot add the tag that is coming, and then notify the listeners. And the way to get those tags, I'll say list of string get tags, and I will return the underscore tags for now. And okay, we can make them final, but okay, let's make them final. Now, how to update these values? So for the title, I'll go to the new or edit note page and then come to the text field for the title, and here it is. And here I want to declare on changed, so it'll give me a value. Specifically, let's name it new value. And now whenever anything changes in this title, this method will be called, okay, except for the cursor movements. We could do this, the same functionality, by declaring a new text editing controller, and then listening to the text editing controller, but that will also listen to the cursor movement. For example, let me show you. For example, I will type something like test. Then whenever we just move the cursor here and here, then that listener to the text editing controller will rebuild itself, okay? And that's not what we want. We want to listen for the actual change in the text, and that is how the unchanged works. So I will say on every change of the value, I want to call the new note controller and dot title and set the title to this new value. Okay, so the title part is done, and let's do the same thing for the content. So for that, I'll go to the quill editor. The quill editor does not have the unchanged, so we have to listen for the quill controller for this change in the text. So I'll add a listener to this by using the cascade operators. So I'll say add listener, and now in here I will say new note controller dot content equals to quill controller dot document. And now this thing is also done, and the only thing remaining for now is the tags. So to do that, I'll go to where the tags are showing on the screen. So here it is. So I want to add the tags to the note by using this button. So let me show you how the design is looking. And here the design, I want to open a dialog for adding a new tag. So to do that, first of all, I want to create the dialog. So I will say show dialog. So this will show me a dialog. This takes a context and a builder, and builder is a function which is coming with a context. So I'll just say context, and then in here I will firstly say I want a column, and then with children, and the children will be first of all a text which will say add tag, and then a text field with a decoration of input decoration, and in here I will say hint text is going to be add tag, and I'll say less than 16 characters. So I want to limit the number of characters of the tag so that we do not add a huge string of tag. And under that I want to add again an elevated button, and as the on pressed I will leave it alone for now, and as the child I will say text add tag. First of all, let's see how this looks like. In the first place, I will hot reload this, and now I will click on the plus icon, and it is showing me an error, and that is saying there is no material widget found. So we have to add a material widget to the column as parent. So I'll say material, and now I will again hot reload this and remove this one. Okay, this is not material app, it is going to be material just. So again I will hot reload and then click again. So it is showing now nicer than before, but there are some issues. First of all, the dialog is showing almost full screen, and second, there are no padding around that, and we have to take care of the styling. So let's start doing this. So first of all, to make the size smaller, just the amount that the column needs, we have to specify the main axis size of the column to main axis size.min. That's the first thing. And the other thing that I want to do is to add a padding around the column. So I'll say padding, and then I'll add 16 pixel to all of the sides. So I'll save it again and see how it looks. So there's no difference. So to make it smaller, besides this property, we have to wrap our material with the center widget. And now if I hot reload this and go back and come again, then it is showing properly. And I want to also limit the width of the dialog, and so I will go to the padding in here and turn this to container and give it a width of media query dot size of context dot width multiplied by 0.75, so 75% of the screen width. This is one thing, and the other thing that I want to do is to come to the add tag text and give it a little bit of styling. So I'll say style and text style font size of, let's say, 16, and font width of font width dot bold. And also let me give some border to the text field. So I'll say enabled border, and I'll say outline input border. And now I will give it a border radius of border radius dot circular and give it a value of 12, and also a border side of border side, and I'll give it a color of primary. And also, yeah, I think this is enough for now, and I want to do the same border for the focused border. Then let's go to the add tag button and add some styling to this too. So I will say style, and it is going to be elevated button dot style from. And in here, let me check the design. So it is with a background color of primary. So I'll say background color primary, and foreground color is going to be white. And also let me give it some border. It is side, so I'll say border side, and the color is going to be black, and then shape is going to be rounded rectangle border, and then the border radius is going to be border radius dot circular, and it's going to be 12 for now. And where is the error? So I think we have to remove this or add. Okay, now the cross-axis alignment of the column is going to be stretch, so the button fills all of the width available. And also I want to align the tag text, so I'll say text align to text align dot left, and let me hot reload this and click this again. Amazing. This looks good for now. So first thing first, I want to add a sized box of height, let's say 32. That's the first thing. And then I want to add some padding. So I'll say edge insets dot symmetric. So for horizontal, I will say 4, and for vertical, I will say 4 again, but for this, I want to make it 8. That's the one thing. And to make this work, we have to say dense is going to be true. And also I want to make this border radius to 8, and also add a shadow to this button. So in the style, there is no shadow option. I mean, this is the shadow color, not the actual shadow that we want, as it is in this design, like in here. So to add that, again, I will wrap this elevated button with decorated box, and then give it a decoration of box decoration, and then I will say shadow, and I'll give it a box shadow of offset with 4 and 4. Let me give it also a color that is going to be black. So let me see how this looks now. Good. Now what we can change here is first the shadow should have a border radius. So we have to add the border radius to the decoration. So I'll say border radius of border radius dot circular, and that is going to be the same as this, which is 8. And I think I have to make these to 2 instead of 4. And also let me also change the internal padding of the text field. So I will give 12 to this, and also let me see how the 12s to the vertical also looks like. Interesting, this is fine. So let me see what is the difference with the design. So first of all, we have to give more padding to the dialog, and then change the shadow, and also add some space between the text field and the button. So to do that, I will first go to the elevated button and give it an elevation of 0. I think this will make this thing look normal. And then I will add a sized box of height 24. And also let's change this from 32 to 24 too. And let's also give an overall padding of 24 in here too. Let's also add a shadow to the overall dialog by adding the decoration and saying box decoration and then shadow, and then it's going to be box shadow. Again, the offset is going to be 4 and 4. Also, let me make the corners rounded, so I will say border radius dot circular, and that is going to be 12. So I'll add border radius, and we have to add it not in here but in here. Fine, let's see it again. So the shadow is showing, but there is a problem. To solve this problem, we have to make the material and change the type of it to material type dot transparency. Okay, let me see this with this change. Okay, so we have to give the container a color of white. So say color, and that is going to be white. Great. Let's give the overall shadow 8. And let's also give a border dot all, and give it a width of 2, and also a color of black. That's the one thing. And for the button, this problem is not solved, so we have to add another property. So we come here, and it is going to be the tap target size, and that is going to be material tap target size dot shrink wrap. And now this will do the work. So let's go back, and this is looking good, but the shadow is too much. So I will go to the container, and here I will change the shadow from 8 to 4 again. Okay, it's now good looking. And let me just change the title of the button to add, because we know that we are adding the tag. Now this is fine, and the only thing that I want to change is the border radius of the dialog, and that is going to be 16. Okay, so this part is almost done, but let me add all the consts. So the dialog is almost complete, but I want to extract all of this card to its new widget, and I will say note card. That's the one thing. And let me go to here and cut all of this and move it to its own file. So I'll go to the widgets and create a new file called note card.dart. We have the note card. So I will say dialog card, and I'll just paste it. I will import the necessary files, and I'll change the name from note card to note dialog. So I want this widget to just represent the card, okay? So I want to remove this column, okay, again, to its new widget, and I will call it new note dialog. And then again I will cut this and bring it to its own file called new note dialog.dart and paste it in here, and then solve the error. And now this represents just the card, okay, not the internal widget. So let me call this note dialog to a better name, and that is going to be dialog card. And let me change its file name too. So click on this and then go to the rename. So say dialog card. Now we can use this widget everywhere we want, but to be able to use it with different kinds of widgets. So we will pass this a final widget, and I'll say child, and I will accept it in here with required this dot child. And then I will replace the new tag dialog with child. And now I will go to the new or in edit note page. In here, I'll change this from note card to dialog card and give it a child. So first of all, we have to import the file, and then the child is going to be new tag dialog. Okay, this is giving me errors because we named this new note dialog, but let's name it again to new tag dialog and then change the file name to new tag dialog. Now we can import this and we're fine. So we have designed the new tag dialog. Now I'll go to the new tag dialog, and in here I want to add the tag by pressing this add tag button. So first of all, to extract a tag, I'll change the state list to a stateful widget first of all, and then I will introduce a final text editing controller. I'll say tag controller, and I will initialize this in the initstate. So I will say tag controller is going to be text editing controller, and we have to change this to late, and then we have to get rid of this in the dispose method. So I will say tag controller dot dispose, and then I will give it to the text field and assign it to the controller, and this is one thing. And now when we press the add tag button, we want to get the tag and then close this dialog and return the tag string. So to do that, first of all, I have to make sure that the tag text is not empty and also is not greater than 16 characters. For that, we have to introduce another property in here, and that is going to be late final GlobalKey. That is going to be of type form field state, and that is going to be tag key, and then we will initialize it in here, and I'll say tag key is going to be global key, and then we can give it to the text field, and I'll say key is going to be tag key. And now I also want to add another property to the text field, and that is going to be validator property, but that is not available in the text field but in the text form field. And now we can add the validator, and the validator is taking a function with a string and return another string. So let me show you. So we say value, and now we can specify the state in which we want to make sure that this text form field is not validated and show a string to the user. So I will say if value.trim.is empty, so I will show and say no tags added, and I will just add the null check, and this is one thing. And else if value.trim.length is greater than 16, so I will return and say tags should not be more than 16 characters, and otherwise I will return null, so means that we are okay and do not want to show anything. So I'll say return null. And now when we press the add button, I will say tag key dot current state dot validate. So this will go and validate this text field and return a boolean. So if it is validated due to these conditions, so it will return true. So I'll say if this is validated and this is giving me error, so I'll just add the null check operator and say otherwise give it a false. So if this is validated, then I want to add the tag. So I will just say navigator dot pop. So I'll pop this dialog with tag controller dot text and dot trim. And then when this value is returned, I want to go to the new or edit note page in here. So this value will be returned from the show dialog. So I will say to the show dialog that I expect a string, and that can be a null. So I will say final tag is going to be await show dialog. So I will wait for this dialog to respond, and I will add the async. And now this tag is going to be of type nullable string. So first of all, let's just print this and say tag is tag to see how this works. So I will just hot reload this, and when I click on this, then I can add, like a tag. And first thing first that we're facing is that this dialog is hidden by the keyboard. So to solve this real quick, I'll go to the dialog card, and in the container I want to add margin, and I will say media query dot view insets of context, and this will solve the problem. So I'll hot reload this, and when I click on the text field, then it will not be hidden by the keyboard, and it will add the necessary margin to the dialog. And now when I add a tag, for example, when I click in the empty tag, let's see how this looks in here. So I'll click on the add, and now it'll show me no tags added because we're not adding any tag. And then if I pressed so many times and then again press this will not again work because we checked for the spaces too. Let me see. We go to the new tag dialog, and in here we said that value.trim. So trim will also remove any additional spaces and then see if it is empty. In this case, all of these are spaces and it is empty at the end. So let me add a tag. I will say a tag, and I will click on the add, and it will be removed. And now the tag is a tag. Okay, so we're returning it properly for now, but let's add a very long tag, okay, to show. And now when we click the add, it'll show us that tags should not be more than 16 characters. So we can make it smaller and then click on the add, and it will be added and shown in here. Okay, so I want to also do some things differently. First of all, when we first open the add tag dialog, we want the keyboard to be focused on the text field. So to do that, I will simply go to the text form field and add the autofocus to true. This is one thing, and the other thing that I want to do, as you would have noticed, is when we click on the add, the borders are changed. So to solve this, I'll just copy one of this border and change it to error border, and then change the color from primary to colors.red. This is one thing, and also duplicate this and change it to focus error border. So both when we're in focus, we want to show this border with red color, and when we are unfocused, for example, in this state. So I will hot reload this, and let's go back to it. Now we are focused directly to the text field, and when we click on this, then it is showing properly. This is one thing, and other thing that I want to do is when we start typing like a new tag, I want to remove this text, okay? It should respond quickly other than clicking on the add button again. So to do that, I will go to the text form field and add the unchanged, and this is going to give us a new value, and I will say tag key dot current state dot validate. So I'll validate it whenever there is a change, so it'll show straight away. Let me check it again. So when I click on this and then click on the add, it'll show me this red message, and then when I start typing like tag is added, it is removed. And then when we cross the 16 characters limit, for example, with okay, it will show straight away, and this is a good user experience. Now we can add it and it'll come here. So now that we are able to add a tag and return it from the tag dialog, now it is time to add it to the actual new tag controller. So I will go to the new or edit note page, and now that we are getting the tag, I will say if tag is not equal to null, the tag can be null in different cases. In one of its cases is when we click on this dialog and then click back out of this dialog, then the tag is going to be null. So we say if there is a tag actually, so I will say new note controller dot add tag, and the tag is going to be the tag that is coming from here. Okay, so this way we will be able to add a tag. Now we will add the tag to the new note controller, but we want to show it in here. So I will go to in here, and now I want to make this listenable to the tags list. So I will wrap this with selector, and now I will say I want to listen to the new note controller, not all of the new note controller, but to a list of string from it. And now I will say selector, I want the new note controller, and I want to return the new note controller, and I want to return the tags. In the builder, I will say I want the tags, and then I want to return the text, but if only the tags are empty, I want to return this text, and otherwise I will return a list of tags. And I want to show these tags list not in a list view because the tag quantity is little, so I'll use a row instead, and then add the children as list.generate, and I want the tags.length number of tags and return a note tag. Okay, and we'll create the note tag, but first of all I want to wrap this row with single child scroll view, and the scroll direction is going to be axis.horizontal. And the note tag I want to use is, let me see if we have made it. No. So I will go to the note card. Here we already have a note tag, and that is in here. So I want to make this to its own widget, so I will just extract this real quick and call it note tag. And then I want to bring it to its own file, and I'll say note tag.dart, and then paste this, and then I will just real quick do the final string label required this dot label, and then I'll give it to here. Now this is good, and now I want to go back to the note card and return this with a label of note tag. For now we're done with this in here, but we want to use it in the new or edit note page, so I will just import it, and as the label I will give it tags index. Let me see if this works, and hot reload this and add a tag, for example tag, and add it, but this is not working. And that is because the way Selector is working is it is storing a previous version of this type and then a new version. So it will compare if there are different objects, then it will rebuild this entire widget. But if they're the same, it will not rebuild this widget. And in this case, the tags is the same object. Okay, we're just adding the tags to the list internally. We're not changing the object of the tags. So to be able to change that, we have to wrap this tags in here, okay, and use the cascade operator. And whenever we add a tag to the tags list, then they're different objects and they will work fine. So let's hot reload this and we'll see the effect immediately. Now we can add another tag, let's say another tag, and we can edit, it'll show in here. And let's add some other tag and we'll edit, and we can scroll through that. One thing that I want to do is to enlarge these tags a little bit if we're in this page. So I will add a final bool large, and I'll say required this dot large is equal to be false, and I will remove the required, so by default it is going to be false. I'll change it to is large, and I'll say if this is a large tag, so I will give it a 14, otherwise 12, and I'll remove the const. And now in this page I will just say is large is going to be true. So I will hot reload and see how it looks. Good. And other thing that I want to add is an option to delete a tag from this list. So to do that, I'll go to the note tag. So I can do this in different ways. First, I can add an avoid callback and also give it a widget for deleting the tag. But I want to do a very simple thing and it will work. And that is going to be to add a final void callback, and I'll say on close, and this dot on close, and this can be nullable, and instead of the text I want to return a row, and I will say if on close is not equal to null, then I want to return two widgets. One is going to be a sized box of width 4, and another is going to be an icon, and that is going to be icons dot close. And then when we click on this icon, so I will give it a gesture detector, and on the on tab I will just call on closed, and I'll change this to on closed. Okay, and now we can safely remove the is large, because when this is closable means this is used in the new note page. So I will just remove this one, and I will just say on closed is not equal to null. And then I'll go to the new or edit note page, and in here I will say on closed, and I will add a function to here. And when this is clicked, I want to remove the tag from this list in the new note controller. So I will say new note controller dot remove tag, and I'll just give it an index. So I'll say index, and we do not have this method in the new note controller, so I'll go and define it. And we have the add tag. I want to also give it remove tag and give it an index, and I will say tags dot remove at index, and then notify the listeners. And let me go back to here, and the index is not defined as the named parameter, so we can simply do it this way. Let me hot reload this. So first thing, I want to go to the note tag again and change the size of the icon to 18. And now when we click on this, we'll remove the tag from the list, okay? For example, we can add tag 1 and then tag 2, and then we can remove any of that. Okay, for example, I want to remove tag 1, then it will be removed. And when we remove the last one, no tags added will be shown. Amazing, this works fine for now. So now it's time to add the note. So I'll go to the new note controller. Now I will add a method called void save note. And this will be called when this button is clicked. So I'll go to the new or edit note page and find that button. So it is in here. So I will say new note controller dot save note. I'll simply call this, and now what this does, it will extract the title. So I'll say final string new title is going to be title, okay, and then again final string new content, and this is going to be content. And to get the content raw string, we say dot to plain text, call the dot trim, and also we have to call the dot trim on this too, and then final string content JSON. We want to also have the rich text form. So to do that, we will go to the pub.dev and search for flutter-quill and see how this is done. So I'll go to the flutter-quill and then go to the input and output, and they're saying if you want to store the text, so you can change it to JSON in this way. So I'll copy this and come to here, and first of all import the JSON encode, and then instead of underscore controller.document, we have the document, and that is stored in the content. And now let's create a new note object. So I'll say final note is going to be note. First of all, to make this code more readable, so when I get the title, I want to trim it, means to remove the spaces, so that we can easily say in here, if title dot is not empty, then return the title, otherwise return null. So I'll make this a nullable string, and then the same for the new content. We will say content.toPlainText.trim dot is not empty, then return this string, otherwise return null. And now I will just simply say new content, and for the content JSON we have the content JSON, and for date created and date modified I will say final integer now is going to be date time dot now, and then turn it to microsecond since epoch, so we want to store it as microseconds. So I will say now date created is now, and also date modified is now for now, okay, and the note is created, and the tags are tags. Amazing. And now we want to add it to our note list, and that is in the notes provider. Okay, we want to add it in here. So first of all I will say void add note and note, and then underscore notes dot add note, and then notify listeners. So to be able to call the notes provider, we have to have access to the context. So for that I will just pass the build context from here, and I will say now context.read, and I'll say read the note provider, and then I will say add note, so it will add the note. When this is called in here, first of all we have to pass the context, and then we want to close this screen. Okay, So I'll say navigator.pop, and let's see how this works. And then add a title, for example, some title, and then some content, and add some tag. And now when I click on this plus icon, the page is closed and the note is added in here. And it is showing the same thing, and that is when we go to the note card, we are just using some predefined data. So to remove this, I'll start with the title. So I will say note.title. That's one thing. And this is giving me error because it is saying that this can be a null. So I want to check for this, and I will say if note.title is not equal to null, then add the text and this sized box. Okay, and then I'm sure that this is not going to be null in here, so I can safely just add the null checker. And the same let's do for the tags, and I will say if note.tags is not equal to null, I will show these two widgets, okay, which are for the tags. And in here I'll change this generate to note.tags.length, and each note tag label is going to be note.tags index, and this is going to be like this. And for the content, I'll say if note.content is not equal to null, then show these widgets. So I will change this if to a different notation, and that is going to be this one. And now I will say note.content, and again note.content, and we have to remove the const. And for the date, we have to extract this date from the date that is coming with note. So to do that, we have to use the DateFormat class, which is coming with the intl package. So to add the intl package, we have to go to the pub.dev and search for the intl, and click on this, and then go to the installing tab and copy this command, and then open the terminal and run it. So this will add the intl package so that we are able to use the DateFormat. Now let's first find the DateFormat class and see how this works. So I will leave this link in the description section, and you can check it out how this works. But like for day you can use the D string, and for the abbreviated weekday you can use the E string, and all of this can be used inside the DateFormat constructor, and you can also use some predefined constructors. Okay, so I will replace this text with DateFormat. Okay, and I will import it from the intl, and then I will say dot format, and the date is going to be date time dot from microsecond since epoch, and I will just say note dot date created, and then we have to remove the const, and in here we can specify the format that we want to turn this date into. And in this case, we want to show the day in 2 digits form. And for the day, let's check what is the pattern. So for the day, it is D. And for 2 digits day, we should use 2 Ds and then a space. And then for abbreviated month, we can use triple M. So I will say MMM and then a comma. And then for the year, we can use Y. And now let's hot reload this and look at this card. So we have just content and 7th of January 2024, and there is some problem because this content should be shown in the top. So let me see what is the problem. So if we have a title, so we are showing this thing, and for the tags, I think we're fine, but I don't know what is the problem, so I'll just hot restart this. And now I'll add a note, and first of all, I will just add a title, note with title, and I'll add it. And this is looking fine, but this date row should be pushed back to the end. So for that, we have to use a spacer in here. So I'll say spacer, and then it will bring it to the end. Amazing. And let's check it with title with tags. So I'll add also a tag, and then add the note, and this is looking good. And now I will just add the content, and then click on this, and then the content is not showing how it should show. So let me see what is the problem. I think the problem is when we add the note. So I'll go to the new note controller, and then in here we are not using the new title but the title. And now that is the problem. So I will hot restart this, and I'll go to the new note page and just add a note with a title, looking good, with just content, looking good, and then content and tags, again looking good, and now with title and tag, and this is also looking good. And when we change this to the list mode, then there is an error, and that error is happening because when we go to the note card, and that is because we're using the spacer in here. So I will use this spacer if is in grid only. And now when we hot reload, then this should look fine. Okay, so we can add a new note, but when we click on this, when there is nothing added, then the page is closed and an empty note is added, and that is not what we want. So to prevent this, we go to the new note controller, and first of all, we want to disable this button when either the title is not available or the content. So I will add a new getter, and I will say bool get can save note, and in here, first of all, I will grab these two and define it in here, and now I will say return new title is not equal to null, or new content is not equal to null. Now this means that we can save the note if there is a title or there is content. So now I can use this method in the new or edit note page and use it in here. So I will wrap this with again a selector, and I will say new note controller, and from new note controller I want a boolean, and in the selector I will say new note controller, and I will say new note controller dot can save note, and as the builder I will say can save note. And now, so what is the problem? This can be to the build context of widget, so I will just add the 2 underscores for the child, and now I will say if can save note, then you can call this function, otherwise this should be null, and this is not accepting the null. So I'll quickly go to the note icon button outline and make this nullable, and now this is fine. So I'll hot reload this, and I'll look at this button. So now it is disabled. We cannot click on this. So we should first add something to the content and then that is available. You know, like even spaces are not working, okay? Either in here or in the title. And now we can add note safely. And if we add the tag even, we cannot add the note because there should be either a title or a content. So I'll just say title. And then when we click on this, then there will be a note added. Now this is great. We can create the note and we can create the note safely. And the final thing for this video is, let me show you. Let's assume that the user has a very important note and they took their time. Like for example, let me add a very large string. For example, I will just really quickly generate some random string and just copy it and paste it in here. And let's say that the user has done all of this, but suddenly he clicks on this back button and all of his work is gone. Okay, now this is not a good experience. So we want the app to open a dialog before closing this page if there is either a title or content. Means if we can save the note, then we should not be able to close this page. So to do so, I'll first of all wrap the scaffold with a new widget, and that is going to be pop scope. And what this pop scope can do is, first of all, takes a can pop, and by default this is true, means the user can pop and can remove this screen. But I want it to make it false. I will say that you cannot pop this, and then I'll add the onPop invoked, and this is coming with a boolean, and we can call it didPop. Now this function is called whenever this page is popped, okay? Whenever we use the back gesture or use this button or use any other button in the screen that calls the navigator.pop. So it'll make this function called, and the didPop will have the values. If it is popped, it will return true, and if it is not, it will return false. So in this case, we are not allowing the page to pop, so it will return false. So first of all, I will say if did pop, then return. So if this page is closed, then do nothing. But if it is not true, means if it is not closed, then I will say show dialog. And in here, I will say return a dialog card. And as the child, I want to give it a column with children, and in the top there is going to be text, and it will show, do you want to save the note? And I will show a row of children of 2 buttons, and I want to get these buttons from new tag dialog, and in here we had this button. So to use this, I will firstly extract this to a new widget and call it note button, and then again I will remove this from here and add it to its own file called note button.dart, and then paste it. And then what I want to do in here is to add, first of all, final string label, and then final void callback, and that is going to be nullable, and I'll say on pressed, and in here I will say required this dot label, and then this dot unpressed, it is not required. And now I will first of all go to the place where the note button is used, and that is in here. I want to first import this, and then I want to add the label, and it's going to be add and then unpressed, and the unpressed is going to be this piece of code. So we have to remove these 2 things and come in here and remove this and this too, and as the unpressed we can use on pressed. And now in here, we are good to go for this one, but now we can use this in the new or edit note page. And in here, I can use it like note button. Okay. And I'll say label is going to be no, and the onPressed is going to be empty for now. And then again, add this one more time and say yes. And now this show dialog. For the no button, it should say navigator.pop with false with context and then return false. And then again, I want to do the same thing, but the value is going to be true. So I want a boolean value from this dialog. So it can be a boolean, a nullable boolean, and I will assign it to a final boolean, and I will call it should save, and I will just await on this, and I will just add this as an async. And now I will say if should save is equal to null, means that the user tapped outside of the dialog, then I will say return do nothing. Otherwise, if it is should save, then I will say new note controller dot save note, and then I want to close this page. So I will say explicitly navigator.pop. And this is complaining of the build context used after the async. So to solve this, I will say if context.mounted return if not context is mounted. Let me see how this works now, and let me hot reload and go, and now it is showing this dialog. So now again, the problem to solve is to give it a main axis size of min. So now when we click on this again, it will show the dialog like this, and in here I will just give it a style of text, style of font, size of 16, and a font weight bold, and then again add a sized box of height 16, and align the row to main axis alignment dot end, and also add a sized box in here too with 8, but it is going to be width. And when we see this again, it'll show something like this. The cross axis alignment is going to be cross axis alignment dot start, and the alignment for the text is going to be text align dot start. And now when we read something and want to go back, it'll show this dialog, and it is not updating the label properly. So I will just replace this with the label that is coming from the constructor, and it is saying yes or no. We will click on the yes, and then the note is added. But if I add something and then click on the no, then nothing will be added. And then when we click outside of the dialog box, then the page will be remained. And now the only problem is if we want to go back now when there is nothing written, then the dialog box is shown again. And we don't want this behavior. So to prevent this, we will go to the new or edit note page, and before showing this dialog, I will say if new note controller dot can save note, then show this. Or even better, I will say if not can save note, then just do navigator dot pop. means just to pop silently and do nothing. So I will hot reload this and see if this works. Okay, it is showing again. The error is because we're just popping, but it'll go and run this code. So to prevent this, I will wrap this in curly braces, and in here I will just say then return. Do not move to this code. So I will hot reload this again, and when we click on this plus button and when we now go back again, it'll be closed. But if we write anything and then go back, then it will show the dialog, and by clicking yes, it will be added to the note list. And when we add a title, then and when we want to go back, then this will be shown, and by clicking the no, nothing will be added. And let me extract this to a new widget, and we'll call it confirmation dialog, and we will move it to its own widget called confirmation dialog.dart. And now we will import it. So now let me add the consts. Okay, so we don't need this one, and let me just refactor the code. Now I want to extract all of this code until here to a new widget. I will copy all of this code until here and go and create a new file for this, and I will call this note metadata.dart. In here I will create a stateless widget and call it note metadata, and then create a column of children and then paste that code in here. Now first thing first, we have to add final bool is new note, and then accept it in here as a required property, and I will remove this. And now in here we should also declare a new note controller, so I'll change this to a state full widget, and now I will say let final new note controller, and the init state I will add new note controller is going to be context.read. And in fact, we don't need to specify it in the generic type because it infers its type from this declaration. And now we can use it in here, and also I don't know why the circle plus is giving me errors. Okay, there is a class created, but we don't want that. We have to import this. And now we can go to in here, and again I want to replace this with note metadata, and I want to import this, but it is not working. Let's see what is the class name, so we will replace it like this, and is new note is going to be is new note widget.isNewNote. Okay, let's just hot restart this and see if everything is in place. So I'll click on this button, and in here, first thing first, I want to add a tag. So I'll say tag, and it is working fine, and then content, and then click on this, and it is added. So yeah, it is working fine. So that was for this video. We worked on several concepts and topics, and we changed our state management to provider, and we are now able to add dynamic notes. And in the next video, we're going to add the capability of editing a note and also deleting a note, and also ordering the notes list by the date modified or date created, and also ascending and descending. So thanks very much for watching the video, and please like and share the video and turn on the notification icon to be notified when the next video is out. Until then, have a good time. See you soon.